Hello and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. I'm Chai Hofelenia, the editor of Newsbreak. It's the investigative and in-depth section of Rappler. This is our ninth episode under quarantine during this pandemic. Our 10th and last episode for 2020 will follow in a few weeks' time. Imagine that. For this month's episode, we will be talking about an unusual story about a killing that our police reporter Rambo Talabong wrote about in early November. We will also be chatting with Mara Cepeda, who has been reporting on Vice President Leni Robredo. If you recall, the VP was the recent target of President Duterte's ire because of her successful efforts to help victims of the typhoons that hit her home province and other parts of the country, including Metro Manila. We also have with us Lian Buan, our justice reporter, who will be updating us about the many goings on in her beat, many of them not very encouraging. Welcome to Newsbreak Chats, Rambo, Mara, and Lian.
Thank you for having us, Ma'am Chai.
Hello, Ma'am Chai.
Hi. Okay, my first question will go to Mara because this is a fairly recent incident. How did the vice president react when the president went on a frontal misogynistic attack against her? And di ba, he even threatened to make her 2022 presidential bid, in quotes, a nightmare. What was this attack all about anyway?
So the vice president was very quick to fact check the president. We know that she was still awake. The president's taped address aired at around 11 p.m. that day. She's awake because she was still at the office of the vice president, the headquarters niya in Quezon City, overseeing actually their operations for to provide relief to the victims of not just Typhoon Ulysses but also Typhoon Skinta and Typhoon Rolly. So the OVP has been doing these operations for the past couple of weeks, and the president seemed to have to have the president felt that the VP was trying to compete with him because Robredo was spearheading disaster relief operations by her own office, and this is initiated with the help of private partners because we have to note that the budget of the OVP is very very small. So what they've been doing even before naman dumating yung mga bagyo and even before the pandemic, what they have been doing is tapping into private organizations, private companies, and then they would link these private companies who want to help with specific communities in need. So,
So,
much like
Mara,
what the VP did,
she was, in
yes,
effect, the vice president was in the office, was in her office when Duterte went on this rampage.
yes. And one of the things that she did to correct the Duterte when he said that the OVP wasn't really doing anything to help disaster victims was to bring out her phone and then record what was happening at the lobby na merong ongoing relief operations. And the VP was very quick to fact check every single lie that the president said, that there was no efforts, that the OVP wasn't doing anything. That was corrected. The VP supposedly was competing with him. That wasn't true. That the VP was questioning where the president was kasi nag-trend yung hashtag nasaan ang pangulo, and
Mhm.
Duterte was crediting Robredo for that trending hashtag. But the thing is, you don't have to do much research. Titingnan mo lang yung account ni VP Leni. Never siyang nag-tweet, never siyang naghanap and nag-question nasaan si President Duterte. What
So
she did,
what were the outright lies that you immediately spotted when you heard the president?
so those are the three things that I immediately spotted. First was that Lenny inciting the hashtag nasaan ang Pangulo trend. She never did that. She never questioned why Duterte was missing in action. There were also lies that the VP supposedly used a government plane, a military plane. Nakisakay lang siya doon
Mhm.
pero hindi niya daw talaga relief goods yung mga nandun, but that that's that that's not true. And actually the VP was able to correct that early on, even before the Duterte's address, because Salvador Panelo was the first one to parrot that lie. Um,
How did you feel having to correct the president? I mean, di ba? Pangulo to eh. Parang normally, you'd have medyo high standards, no? And you wouldn't, journalists normally don't have to do it. Pero in this case, you were very quick to fact check the president and parang spot, right on the spot, no? Ang bilis ng mga ng fact checking na ginawa mo online. How did it feel as a journalist?
I felt that it was really, I felt compelled to do it just because honestly, I was quite shocked that the president was spewing out these lies because these are the things that I've been seeing trolls replying to my tweets and to my posts whenever I post about my reports about the VP. So I was quite shocked because parang pareho talaga ng messaging, pareho ng linyahan. And so I didn't have to think twice. I immediately identified that these were lies. So I had to correct it. As a reporter, my job is to tell the truth.
Mhm.
And when the president lies about not just a political rival, but lies about anything, lies about policies, lies about facts, you have to correct it because when the president speaks, ordinary Filipinos will believe him because a lot of them voted for him, and precisely because he's the president. We always put our elected officials we put them on a higher standards. And when the president lies, chili domino effect ito eh. If the president can get away with lying, then all other politicians could get away with it. So, as a reporter, I have to correct that. I have to tell the people your president is lying. This is the truth, and up to you to make the judgment on why he's probably lying.
Pero di ba, the typical troll attack or the criticism is ikaw as a journalist, as a reporter and Rappler, because you belong to Rappler, is biased. Kailangan mo pang talagang i-protect ang vice president and i-fact check ang presidente. What do you say to those criticisms?
Correcting misinformation is not a matter of protecting someone else or protecting a politician or protecting the institution that you're covering. It's protecting the truth. And I think we have to correct this notion that being biased is bad because everyone is biased. Our biases are shaped by how we are raised, the people we are working with, the friends that we surround ourselves with, how our parents raised us, the schools that we went to, and this is how we perceive the world. Lahat tayo may certain biases. But as a reporter, some biases are good, some biases are bad. As a reporter, we were taught and we were trained by our bosses and Rapplers to identify our biases and manage them, and don't allow those biases to reflect on our work. Some biases are good and are actually helpful in our work as journalists. I am biased for fairness. I'm biased for the truth. I'm biased for good governance. And when we see these things being done by people that we cover, when we see these things being exhibited by the institutions that we cover, then we write about it. When they are doing the otherwise, then we write about it and tell the people why this is wrong, why a certain cabinet official or elected official is doing something wrong. Biases aren't inherently bad. It's about knowing which ones you can use to actually report well and report right and make your readers become informed so they can make wiser choices and be smarter when the elections come and when they emulate certain politicians. They know kung sino yung dapat nilang susundin.
Sige, I'm curious about yung views din nila Rambo and Lian on this issue. Kasi minsan there's this expectation, di ba, that, reporters, ang trabaho lang is to report. Kung ito yung sinabi ni X or ni official Y, then all you do is take note and include it in your reports. Kaya nga reporter, di ba? But then I remember that same evening, nag-trend yung #GMA7. And I guess Lian and Rambo, you were also online that night, and you probably saw what was going on Twitter. And also another GMA reporter was na hashtag din siya, no? So parang I guess the expectation is that reporters should just report Pero meron ding school of thought na hindi dapat gatekeeper nga ang journalists, 'di ba? So what are your feelings? What are your views about this? The two of you.
For me, there are things that are open to interpretation, and there are things that have two sides. There are things that have more than two sides, but there will always be undisputed facts. There are verifiable facts, and there are facts that need no verification. They are just facts. And I think reporters' jobs is to know which facts are being said, which kinds of facts are being said, and to be able to immediately tell and identify na, oh, itong fact na sinasabi nito, I don't need another person to tell me that it's a lie, for me to tell me that it's a lie. When I was watching the speech, I could understand, because I was reading Mara's tweets, and I could tell from her tweets that she has institutional knowledge of the OVP and kind of an
Right.
expertise on VP Robredo. If I were, for example, I was assigned to cover that speech, and I cover neither President Duterte nor VP Robredo, I think I would still have difficulties in fact checking because I don't know the 24 hours ins and outs of these two people. So I think the things or the suggestion that was running inside my mind is that there should be a way for newsrooms to be able to delegate these tasks. So, I don't know how we're able to do it kasi hindi naman pwedeng lahat ng tao ay nagmo-monitor sa presidente kapag nagsasalita siya. But there should be a way in which reporters who know the subjects are able to weigh in and are able to verify quickly. Ganon. Like for example, Ma'am Chai, if you remember the Trillanes amnesty issue in which the presidential spokesperson back then, Attorney Salvador Panelo, was in a tete with President Duterte. And because it was, we expected it to be about the amnesty issue, I was asked to also monitor because that's what I cover. And immediately I can tell which lies were being said by the spokesperson, which lies were being said by the president. I don't expect PIA to be immediately tell that immediately, or other reporters to be able to identify which are lies. But I can do that, but I cannot also do what Mara did. So feeling ko that's going forward, that's what newsroom should be able to figure out.
Right. Excellent points yan. In fact, it's really the expertise nga of reporters that people bank on. So, dahil kabisado ni Mara ang OVP, she was able to do that. So in the case of Lian, dahil kabisado rin niya ang justice related issues, and monitor yan frequently on a regular basis, she's also able to spot na parang medyo off yan, and it has to be pointed out. Ikaw, Rambo, what thoughts were running through your head that night?
I completely agree, Ma'am Chai, sa lahat ng sinabi ni Mara at saka ni Lian. To add to what they've said, I want to talk about yung sinasabi ng mga trolls na bias. And even it's a pervasive understanding of reporting that I think we also have to talk about. That reporting should be magnifying what's already being said by official sources or institutional sources. But at the same time, these biases have to be questioned. This discourse on bias, hindi pwedeng may stuck lang tayo sa may bias ba o wala. Paulit-ulit lang sinasabi eh. And I think isang problema yung paggamit itong lengguwahe ng mga trolls din. Nangyayari ang usapan, bias ba o hindi. Pero kailangan lang natin tingnan ay common sense. As in, kailangan lang natin tingnan yung katuturan na kung ano ba talaga ang trabaho ng mga mamamahayag. Ang trabaho namin ay tingnan ang katotohanan, hindi ulitin lahat ng sinasabi ng mga opisyal. Lahat na nilalabas natin, kailangan natin paulit-ulitin sabihin sa ating mga mambabasa, ay hindi natin nilalabas ng merong expectation na wala tayong gagawin, ipapasa lang natin sa ating mga mambabasa kung anong sinasabi ng mga opisyal. Pero merong expectation na dapat tinitingnan natin kung tama o mali. At dito papasok yung ni-raise mo rin na dalawang medyo old terms na rin, ma'am, sa yung gatekeeping at saka yung mismong pagsasabi ng reporter, i-gatekeep ko ba hindi? It's not really gatekeeping, it's not really limiting the information that we're giving to our readers, but giving it the proper context kasi kaya namin gawin. At ito yung trabaho namin bilang mga reporter, ilagay sa tamang konteksto lahat ng sinasabi ng mga opisyal ng mga makapangyarihan. Kasi ang mga taong normal lang o mga ating mga citizens na mamabasa lang, hindi naman nila alam agad-agad kung ano talaga yung background, kung ano yung issue. Kaya trabaho natin, ito yung ating pinagtatrabahuhan, hindi yung pagpapaulit lang na sinasabi ng mga gobyerno. na mga opisyal ng gobyerno. At paulit-ulit ito sinasabi sa Twitter at tamang-tama ito, tayo ay reporter, hindi tayo stenographer.
Correct. Tamang-tama. At hindi rin tayo recorder na parang pipindutin mo yung isang gadget, yung telepono mo, tapos i-replay mo lang as is, na wala kang input whatsoever, kahit na alam mo naman in your head na ito ang tamang konteksto, ito yung tamang background. I remember merong ngang isang, and sinasabi ito si Paterno, nagpaalala nito. Si Paterno yung aming news editor. Meron siyang pinaalala recently. Sabi niya, di ba pag sinabi sa yung umuulan, ang instinct ng reporter, titingin siya dapat sa labas ng kanyang bintana para i-check, umuulan nga ba o hindi. Hindi yung automatic na i-report mo. Sinabi ni X and Y, umuulan, therefore yun yung katotohanan. Kailangan i-counter check mo talaga. At kung hindi umuulan, sasabihin mo na sorry, mali, hindi umuulan. In fact, umaaraw. Matindi ang init ng araw. So tama yung points nga ni Rambo at saka ni Lia, napakahalaga no na dapat yun talaga ang papel ng reporter at ng journalist, kasi na-develop na rin yung expertise So ibinabahagi lang yung expertise at yung konteksto na yon doon sa mambabasa. Yung isang point din, recently, di ba, ang Pangulo kasi, he's a night person. Di ba, sinasabi niya, my day starts at, anong oras? 2 p.m.?
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Tama. So 2 p.m., di ba, ang expectation mo, di ba dapat sa umaga? Di ba dapat 7 or even, sige, 8 o'clock ng umaga, kasi government offices open at 8 o'clock supposedly. Pero siya, night person siya. So, ang media naman, ang expectation din, nakaabang ka. Kung in-announce ng Malacanang na meron siyang speech mamayang alas 10 o mamayang alas 9, forever kang maghihintay. Pero parang nagbabago na yon. Ano yung sense nyo doon na dapat, because it is the office of the president, it is the duty of the media to wait, to air whatever he wants to air at whatever time. Dapat bang hintayin lagi ang Pangulo? Kasi office of the president yun eh.
I see the sense of saying that kahit anong oras pa yan at kahit ano pang sabihin ng Pangulo mo yan eh. So whatever he says is important, it will become policy. But I think we also have to look at track record. Has this president proven to us that all of his words are important enough and are policy? I think he has not. I think in the how many months of pandemic have we been in? Siguro po nung mga first 1, 2, 3 speeches niya during the pandemic, you'll really wait for him because you never know when he's gonna say he's the president. But in the last months of the pandemic, he has proven that 20% are important, 80% are trash. And I think we just have to ganun talaga eh. We just have to admit that. And so, dahil napatunayan niya na at napatunayan na natin dapat na hindi naman lahat ng sinasabi niya ay importante, I think at this point, we should be able to make a call to either wait for it na lang in the morning or even better, we will still cover it. And then if something really big happens, then we will report it real time. If not, and then edi wala, let's just say tomorrow what the summary of what he said.
Rambo or Mara?
I completely agree with what Lian is saying. And actually, napapaisip ako dun sa mismong treatment kay Pangulong Duterte. I don't know if this is a disease or a malfunction that we have acquired for the past few years under Duterte. Yung lahat ng speech kailangan ilabas kasi natatakot tayo na meron siyang sasabihin na drastic, na meron siyang sasabihin na very sensational, very controversial na kailangan gawa ng story. Yan, natatakot tayo na kung hindi natin ilalabas yun, baka maunahan tayo ng iba o baka naman ay mahalaga to pero hindi natin mailabas. Pero nakikita nga natin na may track record na talaga si Pangulong Duterte na okay, hindi naman policy lahat ng kanyang sinasabi. At saka mamaya kung maglabas siya ng very, very intense na order o talagang nakakagulat na utos para sa halimbawa isang cabinet official, wala namang papel. So kailangan din natin, I think, i-re-examine as media as an institution kung kailan ba natin dapat ilabas at lahat ng kanyang sinasabi. Kasi tapos na 4 na taon na rin natin lalabas lahat ng kanyang sinasabi. I don't know if it's late kailangan i-re-examine natin yung pagko-cover sa Pangulong Duterte kasi nga ang daming kasinungalingan din lumalabas sa sinasabi ni Pangulong Duterte. At perfect time to re-examine it now, especially after attacking the Vice President during a crisis briefing.
Mara, wanna jump into?
Ako naman tingin ko dapat ipapaalala din natin sa Pangulo na kailangan niya ring respetuhin yung oras. Kung hindi man tayong mga mamamahayag, yung oras ng tao na bumoto sa kanya, ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino. Ang hirap kasi kay Duterte, lalo na dito pagdating pa lang sa pag-e-ere ng mga addresses niya. Parang, alam mo yun, parang tayo yung nahihintay sa kanya. Minsan meron siya mga importanteng polisiya tungkol sa pandemic, halimbawa pagbago ng quarantine procedures. Ina-announce niya, patulog na yung mga tao, tapos yung mga tao na yon na naghihintay sa quarantine procedures, kailangan gumising ng 5:00 ng umaga kasi may trabaho. Diba? Kailangan din natin kasing bilang media, kumbaga ipaalala dun sa Pangulo na act presidential. If you have important policy decisions, announce it early on. If it's a tape address, why do you have to air it at 11 p.m.? Why can't you air it at 8 a.m.? Especially if it's a decision that's been decided upon by the cabinet already. I think there has to be a point where Philippine media has to exert effort collectively on the president. One, to stop the lies. Two, to respect the time of the people. And to three, alam mo yun, hindi mo sasayangin yung medium ng pag-e-ere ng mga speeches. Kasi ngayon parang nawala na yung value niya na kung ako ay hindi reporter, hindi ko napapanoorin si Duterte kasi yun na nga katulad ng sinabi ni Lian and ni Rambo. Ang nasa mindset na natin na madami na lang siyang sasabihin na kung ano-ano na hindi naman makaka-apekto sa kung paano ako gagalaw in the next few days, paano ko papakainin yung mga anak ko, ganun. Kailangan meron tayong mindset na mag-exert ng pressure sa Pangulo, hindi yung hahayaan lang natin siya to get away with very unpresidential acts because that's not right.
Ang hirap
May
na
I just-
kasi. Yeah,
May
go
I just
ahead.
add, Ma'am Pai, na
Go ahead.
meron naman, we have very advanced technology naman, not para hindi natin, kasi kung ang takot natin ay ma-miss out natin yung sasabihin niya, we have very advanced technology. Yung mga reporters, pwedeng manood pa rin, hindi lang naka-air live. And then, if he says something really important, then we cut, excerpt, air agad. Sa TV, meron namang live breaking. Sa internet, more so. So, we don't have to give it, parang, let's spare the people. Tayo na lang yung magsala and let's just give the people what they need.
Very good points. Actually, di ba kung isipin niyo, si Pia yung nakasalang dito eh. And she has to listen to hours and hours of Duterte. And meron tayong privilege and merong pwede kang lumayo eh. Pero si Pia, wala. Kailangan niya talagang pakinggan lahat at panoorin lahat. But yeah, these are important questions that the media as a whole will have to grapple with. Dapat nga may negosyasyon with Harry Roque and with Malacanang na konti namang respeto rin sa amin kasi hindi naman kayo monarchy, hindi naman kayo hari. So parang we have to meet halfway. Interesting din, di ba, in the US elections, maraming nakapansin nito when Trump was speaking, and ganun din, he was also spewing lies, no? Pero at some point, naging the US networks made a decisive move to speak over him, kinat-away siya, tinigil yung pagsasalita niya, pinatungan talaga siya, no? Do you think this is something that we should also be doing and be comfortable doing?
Yes.
I think so too, but the media landscape here and the political landscape here is very different, and I think that's why not a lot of newsrooms are doing this. Actually, kahit tayo naman hindi pa natin ginagawa yung kina-cut off natin yung feed ni Duterte. Siguro kasi mas very hostile din yung landscape dito. Tsaka in a way, yung na-notice yun ng mga Filipino audience during the elections, tas talo na si Trump noon, 'di ba? Paalis na siya. Dito yung pangulo natin may 2 taon pa siya. At may mga ibang worries na hindi siya uupo kahit sinabi niyang ayaw niya ng magpangulo, gusto atat na siyang umalis. There's still that concern that this authoritarian president would want to extend his power. Iba yung landscape dito. Local media, Philippine media also has to contend with the realities that there are powerful businessmen and influential politicians who own or who have stakes in media companies. So yung paggalaw ng mga newsrooms, yung iba, nakadikta yan to the powers that be. So it's not gonna be that easy. And I think that's why there's, for the longest time, lalo na under kay Duterte, there's been a call for media to work together, especially when the industry is under attack. But hindi siya kasi ganun kadali. I mean, we have seen specific newsrooms being attacked by the president, and it took a long time before other newsrooms rallied together to defend press freedom. Kasi iba talaga yung landscape dito, and it's really a constant struggle. But I agree. I do hope we reach that point where if a president, it doesn't have to be Duterte, future presidents will be lying on air, we cut it off kasi walang totoo dun sa mga sasabihin niya, and papasok na dun din yung expertise natin. Alam na natin magsisinungaling na siya. Let's cut it off and put the proper context.
Rambo?
I'd like to emphasize dun sa point na sinasabi po ni Mara that this is really a self-sustaining problem that is perpetrated also by the government. The powers that be, we have to name that the person who actually has the compass to control all of these. You have President Duterte directly attacking ABS-CBN. You have local officials attacking local media. They are the ones who are perpetrating this very hostile media landscape that's preventing independent, factual, and intellectual discussion of how they should be covered. Their understanding of how the media should treat them is rooted on this understanding that the media should treat them specially, that we should be beholden to them, and that if we don't echo what they say, there are consequences that follow. And we understand the circumstances from other newsrooms, and even for Rappler, we are under attack. This is something that is perpetrated by the government, by the people in power. And for now, I believe what we're doing is all right. We are doing fact checks, but I agree with what you're saying that we can do more.
The problem kasi is it's a very, very political process, and power play talaga to. From the point of view of government and the executive, parang media is also a powerful institution. Kasi siya yung nagmamagnify, siya yung nag-amplify ng messages, konting distortion lang, affected din yung messaging ng gobyerno. So I guess from the point of view of the executive, kailangan mo ring i-co-opt ang media. Lalo na meron din namang medyang pasaway, meron ding medyang hindi responsable. So parang merong ganong dynamic. So it's something that really has to be worked out. Siguro one good thing, one takeaway ko from all this is that napipilitan talaga ang media na parang self-examination, parang ano yung relasyon natin sa isa't isa, paano tayo, how do we stand up to, or how do we work with the government that is this way, that with the president that can be unpresidential. So parang, maraming questions din na talagang kailangan hanapan ng kasagutan. But I'd like to shift also, kasi hindi lang naman media ang pag-uusapan natin dito or the Office of the Vice President in relation to the disasters. Isa pang disaster na nangyayari is the Antiterror law. And recently, ang dami-daming, medyo nararamdaman na natin ito. Alam na alam siguro ito ni Lian. So magpa-update tayo kay Lian about the actual implementation of the Antiterror law. Sino na ba yung naapektuhan, and ano yung dapat nating, siguro what are the things that we should be watching out for? Lian?
The latest update is that 2 people, ITAs, have been charged of terrorism under the Antiterror law. They were charged in September. The allegation was they shot and killed a soldier. The counter allegation is that these soldiers were bombing their ancestral lands. They tortured the IPs, and so the ITAs were evacuating. It's a perpetual narrative of IPs against the military. And sabi nga namin nung nalaman namin that two ITAs have been charged, it's really a fear realized because we knew deep in our hearts that either it was going to be an IP or a farmer. We always talk about activists being the target, but I think the activists, especially those who are prominent, enjoy the protection of prominence. So they are being closely watched. The spotlight is on them. So our fear was really the IPs and the farmers in the countryside. At yun nga yung nangyari, two people have been charged. My story last time was that a religious group, the Rural Missionaries of the Philippines, were lost access to all of their bank accounts, not under the anti-terror law, under an existing law, the Terror Financing Act, but it was implemented in the context of the anti-terror law, and it was done while they were crafting the anti-terror law. But I guess the more important question, and this is what I always want to emphasize in every story, is what has the Supreme Court done? Because as soon as the law was passed or was signed in July, petitions started being filed, and that was way back in July. November na, wala pang TRO, and the lawyers have continually pointed out that you don't need much for a TRO. We don't need to prove that this is unconstitutional. They're saying that we just only need to allege that the law restricts free speech. And we have done that. And that's what you did in cybercrime law. We allege that it restricts free speech. The Supreme Court issued a TRO 1 month later. What's happening now? It's July, August, September, October. Magpo 4 months na. Wala pa ring TRO. And that has allowed 2 people to be charged under the anti-terror law. More people at risk of being charged.
Alam mo, yung nakakatakot lang, parang, especially, sige, so you have the anti-terror law, tapos merong pang mga, idagdag pa dyan yung mga killings, no? Hindi talaga tumigil yung yung killings eh. Patuloy pa rin siya kahit na may pandemya. And recently, napansin natin na dun sa count ng Rappler, tama ba? Ang huling count natin ay 53 na ang lawyers na namamatay under this administration. So parang ang pakiramdam ko, namamanhid na ang tao na lawyers, 53, okay, 53, it's just a number. Ay, dalawa lang naman yan. Isang NGO religious group, isa lang naman yan. So parang walang rage. Walang rage sa mga Pilipino. Hindi ba nakakabahala yun? Lian?
Sobrang pong nakakabahala.
Nagalit ka ba?
Sobrang nakakabahala yung rising, I would call it alarming rise in lawyer killings. Kasi I think people have to understand that when the legal profession is under attack, when lawyers are killed on their way to hearings, when judges are killed, when prosecutors are killed, it's a direct threat to the justice system. It's parang kinakaya ng mga kriminal ang hustisya. Para ang mensahe nito ay, gagawa kami ng krimen at hindi nyo kami mapapanagot dahil yung mga alagad ng batas papatayin namin. That is the message, and I don't know why there is no rage. Siguro it's too much to ask for ordinary Filipinos to express that rage. So I am gonna put that on the lawyers. Where is the rage? I mean, I see the statements of condemnation from lawyer groups, I mean, the profession. But we should go beyond statements. Where's the rage? Where's the collective expression of this rage and the demand for action? I don't think I've seen one.
Sasabihin ng lawyers, pinapatay nga kami eh. So we are also afraid.
Yeah, but sabi nga nila, you should fight the fear. I mean, if we're gonna let the fears, it's easy for me to say that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not part of the profession under attack, but journalists are also under attack, and much as there has been a reluctance also on the part of journalists to fight back, I think all sectors naman were observed to be reluctant at the very start to speak up. Pero the thesis statement kasi is kailan pa, ang dami nang namamatay. Do we need to wait for the 54th lawyer to drop dead?
Mm-mm. Yeah. Speaking of killings pa rin, no, do you think we are where we are right now precisely because of the history nga of EJ case na nagsimula as early as what was it, October, Rambo, October 2016, or even baka August pa nga eh. So nagsimula yon, and we've lost, I don't know how many, ilan na bang namamatay? If you talk to human rights groups, what, 25, 27,000? If you talk to the government, conservative, 5,000, 6,000, maybe 7,000. Yun na yung pinakamataas that they would go. And recently, Rambo, could you tell us about this story that you stumbled on? How did you know and hear about this when you were in Quezon, and this was something that happened in Angono? Paano mo natunugan itong killing na ito?
Mhm. So actually, this story started from a thread of tweets which went viral online. An anonymous medical worker posted on Twitter a thread of how he saw someone being brought into their hospital in Angono Rizal, bleeding already, and then hours after they tended to him, somebody went in, shot him dead. And it's a case of extrajudicial killing. Of course, we can't just publish the tweets on their own because it's not verified. It's from an anonymous source, and the details are so vague. And we can't just match it automatically with the spot report. So we tried to reach out to the person who posted it, and we were able to speak with him. And what he told us beyond the tweets were really gruesome details of how this person was killed. His name is Vincent Adia, and he's 27 years old. He was shot in the head twice, left in the pavement to die, labeled as a pusher, and also a holdapper. And then, after being brought to the hospital, hours later, a gunman storms into the hospital and then shoots him twice and then leaves. And then nobody was there. Controversial thing about this killing is that the police were in the hospital minutes before the killer arrived. And we have a follow-up to this story showing that Vincent Adia's last words actually implicates the police. He has a message to one of his closest friends saying that I have a few days left. The police gave me only a few days left. Could you please help me? It's either me or this other guy. This is a first documentation in the drug war, where a victim of an alleged EJK actually gave out his last words saying that the police are out to kill him. And days after he sent out that message, he was killed.
And what happened? I mean, okay, we published two stories, two of your stories about Vincent and the follow-up. What was the reaction of the police?
The usual reaction that we get from the police when we publish a story that possibly implicates them in the crime, they give us radio silence. We've been trying to call them for weeks after. Initially, when we were trying to get the spot report, when we were trying to get the details, when we were trying to get their side of the story of why they were not around precisely the moment when the killer went into the hospital, they were so helpful with their details. Oh, nagkasali sila. It was only bad coincidence. But once the story was out, when we were asking for their comment on whether the police should be investigated here, whether by protocol the police should actually sack officials and also police officers who might be involved in the killing, they give us radio silence. And what's sad also about this case is that local media coverage of this slightly died down. There aren't a lot of follow-ups from reporters who have been able to go there and to meet with people who were in the scene and the police officials. And something that I also want to point out is in this story, there are CCTV cameras, but then when the police supposedly examine them, they are not working at all.
Napaka-perfect excuse, no? The CCTV cameras aren't working. It's really a pattern. So paano yan? You can't bank on the police. They're supposed to enforce the law. You can't quite bank on the rage of the lawyers who are also supposed to uphold or fight for the law, the rule of law. Ano na lang ang recourse ng ordinaryong mamamayan? Anong gagawin natin kung weekend ang law enforcement at weekend din ang mga abogado? What do we do?
I think that's why the role of journalists have been more pronounced. I mean, when I was reviewing queer questions, Ma'am Chai, I was prepared to answer that there is really a widespread sense of helplessness If you remember, we had an email a while ago about a person who was trying to ask us for help for a case of rape. We couldn't help her kasi we're not lawyers, we're not prosecutors. And pati sa mga reporter, there's a sense of helplessness kasi parang nakikita namin how it collapses. There's the breakdown of the breakdown and the shortcomings and the loopholes of the justice system that kahit anong follow-up mo, parang nakakapagod i-follow up kasi you get the same answer over and over again. Kaya siguro feeling ko that's why media needs to galvanize its power kasi when everything falls apart, it's the journalist. I don't want to make the journalist's job too heroic. Ayoko maging messianic. Pero now that we are already put in this position, we might as well just, do the part. Kasi parang, ma'am Chay, all this discussion about can media cut Duterte, can media do more and everything. I get the hesitation because we were raised in a culture of journalism where balance was our religion and it's really hard to quit church. So today, there is fear that if we antagonize the supporters of President Duterte, if we cut Duterte, if we hit too much, then baka hindi na talaga tayo panoorin or basahin ng mga Pilipino kasi they'll just turn into their echo chamber, which are the bloggers and the propaganda, and it is a more painful loss and a more tragic defeat if we lose our audience. So I get where the hesitation and the fear are coming from, and siguro ang root cause naman nito is waning trust in media and in journalism. So siguro there is no more crucial time than now to start getting back that trust and do rewiring everything to get back the trust, and we can start doing our work.
Okay. Mara?
I agree with what Lian said, and I think it's also important in my case, I cover the OVP, and recently there was quite a hot discussion online where anti-Robredo trolls are accusing the supporters of the VP that they're trying to put her on a pedestal and make her a messiah. I think also there's this we have, as journalists, we have a responsibility to get out of to con- not no 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 to but to make all sides of the aisle to get out of their echo chambers and really to understand, for example, the critics of the vice president. Where are they coming from? Why are they so against her, even if she's doing good things, objectively good things that have benefited people at no cost to the government? What is it with her, or what is it with the party that she belongs to, that makes this critics so angry at her and at what she's doing? And I think we have to get out of that echo chambers, and part of that really is as reporters to be able to capture that in your stories. Kapag if there are lapses in how the institution you're covering or the politician that you're covering, meron siyang ginawang lapses, you have to point out, you have to contextualize it also. On outside of media, I think dapat kasi feeling ko meron pa ring nandun pa rin yung perspective ng iba na hindi naman kasi nangyayari sa magulang ko yung killings. Wala naman ako kamag-anak na namamatay. Okay pa naman ako sa school, nakakapag-aral pa naman ako, may internet ako. I don't have to care about what's happening outside the world. I think we need to get out of that also. Na hintayin mo pa ba na may mamatay sa pamilya mo bago ka magalit na may mga pinapatay ng pulis or may pinapatay ng mga vigilantes, na pinapatay yung mga abogado? Hihintayin mo pa ba na mahal mo sa buhay yung mamamatay before you would actually care? And there are a lot of ways to be involved. There are a lot of civil society groups na gumagawa ngayon ng aksyon, anywhere from helping raise funds so that jeepney drivers who lost their jobs during the pandemic will have alternative sources of livelihood. Students now are staging different kinds of protests and controversial protests at that, but they are doing something, and they're making the man in Malacanang care about them so much that he threatened to defund UP, which actually he can't do. So kailangan ganun eh. Hindi mo kailangan to be part of this big institution to be able to do something. Kailangan may awareness ka na yung mga ginagawa ng gobyerno sa kapwa mo tao, pwede niya rin kasi yun gawin sa'yo. Kailangan may awareness kang ganun, and you really have to care. Kasi you do not want the day to come when the killers would finally be at your front door and no one would be able to help you because, well, you didn't help when you could.
You didn't do anything. Yeah, Rambo?
I guess to reframe the question, Ma'am Chai, what's astounding to me is more than the perceived lack of care of our readers, of people who are reading. What's really astounding is government officials not giving anything about this. Like, they're not surprised anymore. Government officials aren't making any statements. When we reported the story of Vincent Adia, it's so gruesome. I mean, of course, I was also so surprised as a journalist. It was so traumatizing to report this, to speak with the family, to speak with people who actually saw him bleed to death, being shot to death after already being attempted at EJK. And how is it that our government officials, they're the first ones to be desensitized about this? Not just our readers, but our leaders. Why are our leaders so desensitized about this already? Is it because there are so many? Is it because they feel helplessness as well? As people in power, they're helpless. I think we should put them again into account. We should not be beholden to their silence. We have to also put it on the record. And I'm sure it's on the record. When we released the story, there are only a handful of government officials who gave out their statements, only a handful of human rights groups, organizations. I don't believe in the heroism of journalism, heroism of our role as publishing their stories. I think we also have to look at it broadly, knowing the context of our role in society. Simula lang tayo, yung storya, ito yung nangyari. Pero alam natin na napakarami mga sektor na pwedeng tumulong dito. Meron ditong pagkakakulang-kulang sa iba't ibang bahagi ng gobyerno, ibang bahagi ng lipunan. At kailangan makita natin na yung mga tao rin na nakakabasa nito at yung mga tao makapangyarihan ay nakikita rin ito. Hindi pwede natin sabihin na okay, nangyari to pero nakalampas lang to sa ating mga mababasa. Pati sa ating mga opisyal, wala nangyayari dito. At patapos ng administrasyon ni Pangulong Duterte, napakarami mga patayan pa rin ang hindi naaayos. At ang PNP chief pa nga ngayon, merong record ng napakaraming unsolved killings sa Visayas. So, it again is a breakdown of so many systems that I don't want to romanticize our role as journalists. I don't want to see ourselves as heroes. That's also problematic. Bumabalik dito tayo sa naratibo na napakarami mga bayani, ang mga reporter dito naghihirap, pero nawawala yung accountability sa ibang mga tao na kailangan magtatrabaho rin, na hindi lang tayo na mga nagkukwento kung ano nangyayari sa kanila. Pero nasaan yung mga abogado na tumatayo sa kanila? Nasaan yung mga local officials para ipaglaban sila na humingi ng boto nito mga taong napatay? Nasaan ang Pangulo na sinasabing may malasakit siya at may tapang siya para sa mga kriminal? Kasama ang mga mamamatay tao sa mga kriminal at kailangan din silang habulin.
Thank you for your thoughts. Mahirap talaga tong panahong ito. I think this is probably one of the most difficult times to be a journalist, to be a reporter, because kakaiba yung values bumaliktad ang mundo. Yung ine-expect mong tama, hindi siya tama. Yung ine-expect mong dapat ito yung katanggap-tanggap, hindi siya ganon. So parang tapos add to that na hati-hati rin ang bansa, at hindi lang ito nakikita sa Pilipinas, nakikita rin to sa Amerika at sa ibang bahagi pa. So parang yung nakakatakot lang in the US, which is supposed to be a bastion of democracy, hindi ganon katibay And kahit yung American media grappling with a lot of questions. So kung ganon, kung yun yung nangyayari sa Amerika, how much more for a country like the Philippines? Parang ano yung role talaga ng journalist at ng media? Siguro I agree with all that you've said na hindi dapat mesaya ang media, ang journalist. Pwede tayong maging Pwede tayong maging apoy siguro, parang para masindihan yung damdamin ng mga taong natutulog. And if that's person towards activism, then well and good. Kasi then you have a more dynamic society and a more dynamic democracy. So parang hopefully in the future, when disasters hit us, when killings strike or affect so many people, then people parang merong collective community action na umahon, di ba? Na sana mag-surface so that, you know, uh, what if we call ourselves a democracy, then we see that ito talaga ang ibig sabihin ng democracy in action. Buhay ang media, buhay ang civil society. So kung merong threats, meron at meron magcha-challenge dyan at merong tatayo para hopefully itama ang mali. So thank you very much for this very enlightening discussion. By December, malapit ng Pasko. By December, it will be our last Newsbreak Chats for the year. Thank you very much, Mara, Rambo, and Dian. And thank you for listening and watching us on Newsbreak Chats. I'm Chai Hofilenya.